Hello, everyone. Welcome to class number 5, Getting Tasks Done. I'm Jared Oshevsky. I am founder and creator of Healthcare Huddle and creator of this course, Intern Year Bootcamp, a course that I wish I would have had pre-residency. It would have definitely lowered my anxiety and increased my efficiency starting on day one. This class is made in partnership with Doximity, and I'll be highlighting some of their tools during this class. So up until now, we went through your morning routine, sign out, pre-rounding, presenting, and now it's time to actually get stuff done. So after you round, hopefully it was less than 2 hours, and if you're a surgery resident, it definitely was more or less than 2 hours, perhaps something like 15 minutes. But if you're an internal medicine resident, you'll know rounds can be quite long, especially in the intensive care unit. So before you even touch base with the resident or with the team, take some time for yourself. Quick 5 minutes, get some coffee, get some food. You want to make sure you're energized. And I'll tell you from experience, you really can't push through the whole day without taking care of yourself. I try to do it every single block. I think that something has changed. Perhaps I'm just insane, but I always feel miserable at around 2 o'clock if I haven't taken care of myself. So get some coffee. And then after you do that, you'll reconvene with the team. That's the resident medical student, and you'll run the list, which I call RTL. We're going to RTL. It's a verb. And essentially what you do when you run the list is you go through all the to-dos for each patient, and you basically divide up tasks, decide who's going to do what, and when it's needed to be done. And if you recall from class 3, I use the method of circles and triangles for my to-dos. So let me go up to class 3. So remember this? Right here? All these? So circles are my to-dos, and I circle them in once I've completed it. So like we know of high flow nasal cannula, circle, done. And the triangles are updates that I only shade in once I've provided those updates to the senior resident, to the attending, or I've written them down in the handoff. One thing I do for myself, besides the circles and triangles, to keep track of things is like a quadrant method. So with this quadrant method, I basically shade in the respective quadrant once I've gone over that certain task. So the top right would be overnight events, consult notes. Here is a lab / imaging. These are orders. And this is if I actually saw the patient, and then at the end, a circle around it all would be my note. I mean, I publish the note, okay? And I go through each one. So once I get signed out and once I review the consult notes, I'll shade it in. Once I reviewed the labs and imaging overnight, I shade it in. Orders, shade it in. And don't lie to yourself. Like, make sure you truly went through each order. That if they're on cefepime, that cefepime isn't going to expire. You updated it, that any labs that need to be collected for the AM the next day, make sure those are ordered. Okay, don't lie to yourself, because it's very embarrassing when you show up the next day and labs are missing or an antibiotic fell off because you didn't review the orders. So don't lie to yourself. And then the top left is if you actually saw the patient and examined them. And then once you submit your note, you give a nice circle. Okay, and so I usually have this down here next to each patient. Right? And as I go through everyone, I'll just circle. Sometimes one patient I saw beforehand, so I'll just shade that top right, and you go based off of that. So that's how I stay organized. As a senior resident, what I like to do is I like to basically prioritize tasks based off of the I don't know if I'm spelling this right, Eisenhower Decision Matrix. And this really helps you decide what is urgent, what needs to be done ASAP, and what can be scheduled for later. This requires cognitive effort at first because you have to consciously remember what the Eisenhower Matrix is, but over time, it's second nature, and it's already ingrained in you, so you already know what tasks need to be done. So I'll do this a different color. So here we have urgent, not urgent, important, not important. For the sake of medicine and the work we do, oops, sorry, I don't like that. and the work we do, we will never have anything that is not important and not urgent, because usually that doesn't reach us, right? Like someone else is figuring that out. That could be like a patient needs socks, or a patient needs a new gown. That is not us. That is not physicians taking care of that. But as you run through your list, you're thinking about what is urgent, what is not urgent, and how can we divide up tasks. So something that's important and urgent, that is something you do now. An example of this would be a patient that you kept getting messages about from the nurse that, intermittently tachycardic, hypotensive, you ordered mildly hypotensive, you ordered a bolus of fluids during rounds, and you told the nurse, like, I'll check back in, but let me know if anything else happens in the meantime. And so now it's after rounds, and what you do is it's urgent. You check in on this patient, and it's important because you don't want him or the patient to deteriorate. So you go lay eyes on them right now. Okay? If a patient is decompensating, right, you see them right now. Something that is important, perhaps not urgent, could be something like a consult, right? The attending suggested that you consult hematology, or that you consult cardiology. Doesn't need to be done exactly right after a round, so this is something that could be scheduled, right? You could delay it to, like, all right, maybe at 12 o'clock is when I'll call the consult. But always make sure you do consults on the earlier side. Do not wait till the mid-afternoon to call cardiology for AFib management. Don't do that. And as a future pulmonary and critical care fellow, don't do that. Nothing's worse than getting a mid to late afternoon consult, because then the patient has to be seen, staffed, etc. But of course, if it's urgent, that's a different story, and that's something you would do on the earlier side. For tasks that are not important and urgent, you can delegate. So delegate to someone else. If you're the resident, you're usually delegating that to the intern, and if you're the intern, you could be delegating to the medical student if you have one. But tasks that are urgent and not important could be like a med rec, right? Like a patient was admitted, that's something that should be done as soon as possible. So you can just have the med student call the pharmacy and do it, assuming that the patient knew most of their meds, and they're already on the important meds for the active issues. Something else that would be like family updates. Urgent, but perhaps not too important, especially if you have other tasks to do that directly impact patient care. And so you could delegate the medical student or yourself to call the family and provide a quick update. And I'm going to give you some tips and tricks for doing so. But above all, what you need to remember is that when you're deciding and going through tasks, your main, the way you prioritize this, besides the decision matrix, is doing things that touch the patient first, right? That's like adding orders for those fluids, retiming the antibiotics, seeing a patient to assess their abdomen. Maybe their abdomen became acutely distended, right? Ordering imaging, stuff like that. You do the things that impact patient care first. Notes, unfortunately, do not impact patient care. Okay, so those notes do not need to be done ASAP. They should not be done before you complete your most important tasks. Don't wait too late to do the notes, but you don't want to be doing notes when a patient needs a fluid reassessment or a sepsis reassessment. And what, at least for me, what typically happens is after we run the list, after we go through all this and divide tasks, the senior resident will go to morning report. For me, it's at 10 a.m. For other institutions, it's other times. But essentially, the senior resident peels off, and so it's just you, the intern, who needs to grind through all the tasks. And your goal really is to complete all those tasks before the resident comes back. So, calling consults, which I'll talk about, I believe, in the next video. Calling families, placing orders, seeing patients, doing all those other tasks that we discussed. And what I want to show you is some quick tips and tricks for getting stuff done. Okay, so we're back on Doximity Ask. This is their homepage. Okay, so quickly, if you need to quickly figure out an antibiotic regimen, just go here, right? Or ask your senior resident. But if you don't want to bother the senior resident, and this is something as simple as, which antibiotic has pseudomonal coverage for, and which one should you use for sepsis, you could just ask which antibiotic covers Pseudomonas and which should be used for a patient with sepsis. Okay? And it'll be cefepime or Zosyn. If the patient, if you're concerned for an anaerobic infection, just throw on Zosyn. But here it says which ones can be used, right? That's quick. Okay? You're not going on PubMed, right? These are quick ways to do it, and it also does a peer check at the bottom, so someone reviewed this. Let's see what else we can do. So say you need to update a family member, right? This is the urgent but perhaps not important task. You don't necessarily need, let me move my face, to call the patient. But if you want to call the patient's family member, what you do is you, on your mobile app, you just type in the patient's number and you can call them. And it'll call them and the number will be your hospital, right? You could input the hospital. Alternatively, you could send a text message to the patient's family, and it's a secure text messaging. You could input their cell phone number and then send them a short text message based off the update, or if there's perhaps a longer update, what you can do is you can go to Ask, okay? And if you recall from the last class, I showed an example of using Ask to summarize a patient's hospital course if you're being called in for sick call. So let me use the same example as the other day. And let's say we're on hospital day 4. So what you can quickly do is input the information for that progress note because you already wrote it. And then you could write, based off of this progress note, provide me a succinct medical update I can share with family via text. Write it at a middle schooler level. Right, so this is a short, succinct update. You can copy it, go to the text feature, type in the phone number, and then paste that in. And you could also allow one-time replies for 24 hours. So usually I'll let them reply in case they have any questions. And if they truly want me to call them, they can let me know, and then I will call. Okay, but this is nice. And then you can go back and forth with the patient. And this way, you're not stuck on the phone for 20 minutes providing an update for non-important updates. Of course, if you're worried that a patient's crashing or is like impending doom, you should be calling the patient's family. Let me be clear. You should be calling the patient's family if a patient is crashing or you are worried about the patient. And then what else? So if we go back to this scenario, say they're a Spanish-speaking family, you can just translate it to Spanish, but just make sure someone who speaks Spanish can review it. Then continuing, say you just need something to be faxed. Maybe a patient was admitted from an outside hospital and you need to obtain records. You could send, usually each hospital has like their own HIPAA form that needs to be filled out to request medical records. So you can download that form, scan it into here, and basically fax it back, right? So you can fax it to North Shore University Hospital, subject line, cover page with your information. And remember, you already have a fax number. Here's the fax number up here. If you need to call a quick consult and you don't want to use your number, again, you could just plug it into your phone, the mobile app version of Ask with the phone number, and that's really it. That's really how to be efficient. Okay, so this is all about getting tasks done, and it's stressful, but you as time goes on, you just become more robust at hammering stuff out. Being a senior resident is worlds better, but it's worlds better because getting tasks done is much easier, right? I don't mind calling a consult. I know exactly what the question is. I know who to call, what to discuss, what to anticipate. As an intern, that's what you're learning. Okay? So I'll see you in the next video where we'll be talking about calling consults, like I said, and working the team.